Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 35th episode of our first run through the House of Light expansion for Book of Hours, playing as the archaeologist, if I recall correctly. I've been putting a number of the videos together all in once. Yes, all right, we've got the Sanskar Journal. I am the librarian of Hush House, and this journal will record what arose from my crime and my curse. The archaeologist's dearest wish when they came to the house was to record a history where their crime could be forgiven or redefined, but you can complete the game by recording any history. You might wish to begin your studies with a Skolakosophy wisdom. And I opened a tomb and found, too late, that it was a prison. The plague that I released is now my shadow, or perhaps I am its reflection. It is too late to set matters right, but it is never too late to protect the future from the past. In Hush House I can do no harm. Perhaps I can even make amends. Now, normally I've gotten into the habit of giving myself a bit of a to-do list, and I do see that we are midday. However, I don't see any notes in terms of things that I wanted to do. I realize this is always a tricky one when, excuse me, when it's on YouTube, because for most people they'll probably be seeing this immediately after the last episode, whereas I, of course, am trying to remember after about a week. But we can take a quick second here. There's a few things that I can do to just reorient myself. So obviously we've got Denzel here. Denzel doesn't have any... we did exalt him with a tool. So that tells me we probably were... I think I was going for the... yes, the librarian's quarters. Okay, so that makes sense. If I recall correctly, I stumbled on getting that last time. Now, I also notice I have a confounding parable. We couldn't have gotten that from, Denzel, but it's possible the book that I got the stone stories from gave us that. The only thing I'm thinking here is, do I have something that I want to turn into, something higher? And I don't think I do, but it doesn't hurt to check. Now, I guess the last step here would be there's a number of books, all of which I can read. Thursley's Ivories and Lovelies, The Gospel of Nicodemus, The Son's Lament. And these are possibilities, but there's also sort of a hierarchy of more and less useful texts. So what I mean by that is, if I look at something like, I think The Son's Lament, I already have Ragged Crossroads, and in fact Ragged Crossroads is at a little bit of a higher level than I would, than what I'm using for all of these other ones. Whereas, actually I think for Thursley's Ivories and Lovelies I might have I do now have Resurgences and Emergences. But Gospel of Nicodemus, I don't believe I have Sacra Solis Invicti, so as a consequence, that becomes a little bit more attractive. I also don't recall... I think Killisimi I committed to Bosk. Yes, I did. Okay. So yeah, and I think I also talked previously about how my particular quirks in terms of building up the Tree of Wisdoms are going to keep me from getting some elements of the soul that I really need for a little while. I'm still going to try and push ahead with that just because we do have some other things, like we have some options available for us. The only other thing I'll note is I don't believe we have... So I'm noticing that there isn't any indicator of a salon. We're partway through summer, so I think it would be a very good idea for me to try and prepare one. We've got both order forms. Do I have... All right, I'm noticing we've got the starts of a... We have the starts of Salon. So probably I'm taking the old group together. So we have Serena here with the orange jumble. We've got Fraser with the beef. Corso with magnificent roast potatoes. Now, I have a note here for potatoes for Denzel, but maybe we want to invite... Well, actually, I guess it doesn't matter if we have some of the occult guests or not. And then poached mackerel for Olympi, so I don't think we have that yet. So this gives me enough information to kind of make the most of my next two... or the next two elements of the soul. So I'm just going to take a minute here and make sure we don't have anything else queued up. So here we're working with the shaft. Presumably that's just so I can keep generating some money. Do we have any other workstations? I don't think we're doing anything with those, but... Excuse me. We're crafting cat wink. Okay, that makes sense. So this would probably be why my... Sorry, I'm keeping the tryst occupied. So I suppose that invites the question as to why I'm not doing anything with the kitchen range, because I can definitely make poached mackerel with my core here. All right, I'm going for it. Poached mackerel, a dish with forge, heart, and moon. I realize this is not the most exciting set of tasks for me to do, but it works. I did not mean to do that. Now, if I ever have spare elements of the soul, it wouldn't be a bad idea for me to prepare these, but I think we're doing okay for... Oh no, actually we probably want to make some Dawn Lion coffee before too long. We'll work that out. Alright, Catwink, dark and pungent. So 3 of the theoretically 5 that we need. I guess technically we only need 1 more if I'm going to be inviting Denzel. Speaking of Denzel, there's no reason why we can't be talking with him to get memories. So speak to Denzel, he might even reply. Add something to enhance Denzel's effectiveness for the day, or just talk. Unlike some assistants, Denzel can make use of metal. And moving on, we'll make a last Catwink with the Edicts Inviolable. We need the Lunar Globe for that. Brew an ink that will ward off worms, though only the least of their kind. And we have a higher level of stone stories now. Of the earth, of its forms, of dwellers, living and dead. And this is good against infestations. I seem to recall saying that I had something that would help me against some of these infestations. So I believe maybe it was Sickle and Eclipse. Yes. Okay, so the Sickle and Eclipse gives me 2 moon. This is probably... Yeah, okay. No, I remember now. I think I was going to try and get rid of the Wink Well on the Radical Measure. So if I recall correctly, it's the 7 moons. So we get 2 here, 3 with the Tryst, 5 with the Confounding Parable, and then 7 with the Catwink. So that's fine. All that I'll do here is I'll renew the Tryst at the Sweet Bones before I renew the Shaft. Tuppence will buy me a hearty meal and a quiet place where I can rest and gather my thoughts. It is summer. I am sitting on the bench outside the Sweet Bones, eating crumbly cheese and nettle wrappings and good black rye bread, soaking up the sun. For the others, nectar against corruption. Yeah, so that's not an infestation. This is a winter infestation. And then the Theoplasma, I don't have much hope working against. He does a lot with silence, this man. Speak to Denzel, he might even reply. Okay. As much as I would love to read about the Turbot Crisis, we will set this aside for a future entry. Now, just taking the time to double check. So we've got the orange jumble, the poached mackerel, the beef, magnificent roast potatoes. So we just get the potatoes if I wanted to invite Denzel. From there, we would need the drinks. So Serena would need Lantern. Technically, we have that with the Evening Isles coffee, though. Olympe would need Forge, so coffee will cover that as well. Fraser wants beef. But then there's a scale coffee that works as well. Corso needs Grail, so that's either cocoa or some of the... we have a few different options. I guess Witching to Saint would work as well. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty clear in terms of how we'll get what we need for the salon, although I should probably work on it sooner rather than later. Of course, as I'm talking about preparing the drinks, I am enjoying a nice fresh cup of tea, and it's the time of season where there's now snow on the ground and it's staying on the ground. It doesn't make it the most pleasant for walking, but the last couple of times I've recorded, there is a nice snowfall, and it's just that time of night where the lights they're providing just a nice little accent to the fresh snow on all the things outside, so it is a bit scenic. All right, we've got another cat wink. This is, of course, going to be the one that we use to restore one of my texts. And we will bring back the shaft. It is summer. I'm sitting on the bench outside the Sweet Bones, eating crumbly cheese and nettle wrappings and good black rye bread, soaking up the sun. Let's take... I think we can just use our good old friend, the reading room, again. So here we will take the confounding parable. We don't get our choice in terms of skills. We have to use sickle and eclipse. We'll take one of the cat wink, and then finally we will take the radical measure. Suppress Winkwell corruption. Actually, I should read the description here. So sometimes when I turn this book to the right angle, I see an eye peering at me from its pages or covers. They close and fade when I leave them in the dark, but light will always bring them out eventually. The softest edge of the velvet's cloaking darkness, invoked carefully through the black flower of the watchman's tree, is a certain cure for Winkwell. I should actually think about that for a moment. So when we talk about the black flower of the watchman's tree, one thing that really caught my attention was in a previous Salon was the association with the red flower of the watchman's tree with inks of power. And of course there are three different ink skills, right? You've got inks of containment, inks of revelation, and inks of power. And one of the things that caught my attention was that you would think that the white flower of the watchman's tree you would associate with the inks of containment, the principle of winter and so on and so forth. But that would invite the question as to why then you would associate the inks of revelation with the black flower of the watchman's tree. And that never really sat right with me. And this is, of course, one of the challenges that you have when you only have three different, you have three options, right? It's very clear where things wind up, or by making a certain choice, you sometimes commit yourself to something that you wouldn't feel comfortable doing after the fact. I also find that this is where it gets a little interesting in terms of lore, or people's reactions to lore. So I am certainly the sort of person who is very prone to really going off the deep end and saying things that don't make any sense on the loosest bit of evidence. So a great example here would be my original reaction to what I found inside the chancel. None of what I had to say about the chancel was correct, and this is just largely me kind of grasping at certain ideas, and then on top of that, my unwillingness to sort of incorporate gods from nowhere, some of the nowhere hours, into important parts of the setting, was something that kind of kept me from making as much progress on understanding this concept as before. So, this is something that I recognize for myself. And, obviously, if you do, we're at a point where I think, a lot of people probably who like to play this game or people who would maybe be watching this channel do some form of knowledge work. Not exclusively, obviously, and I don't mean to hold that up as some sort of ideal, because I've done time in Starbucks too. But I think probably it's fair to say that if you have a certain temperament, you will probably wind up doing that type of work. And, it's just going to have some bearing in terms of how you, either how you look at things or the types of problems that you're taking on. So in my own experience, right, it can be very helpful to have these impulses, right, to get a little bit of evidence and run with it. Because very often when you're dealing with knowledge work, you're trying to solve something that doesn't have necessarily an on-the-shelf solution. You are potentially solving a It may be a small problem, but it is a unique problem because if there was something just packaged that you can take off the shelf, you'd do that already. So in my own case, I try to find that balance in terms of, trying to allow new ideas to come in and don't be too critical at the start to cut off the flow, right? Like sometimes there's just this nice place for wool gathering where you say things that you wouldn't necessarily want to stand by in like a published paper or, a seminar or something like that. But if you try, it's kind of like the Don Knuth, idea about early optimization. You don't want to get to that perfectly polished idea too early either, because then you miss out on all the fun, weird ideas that you generate in that period. So with all of that in mind, this is a huge scaffolding for a very simple point. What I do tend to notice, and I say this because I recognize it in myself sometimes, is that once you have something to hold on to and you have that first impression, you can just move heaven and earth to try and make that work, right? So I've seen some ideas that will try and say why actually it makes perfect sense that revelation would be associated with the black flower. And to me, the guiding light of this has always been, am I saying this because this is what I would have said if someone had put the idea in my head, hey, what if there's an association between the inks and the flowers of the tree? Which, by the way, could just be, 3 and 3 on its own is already, it's not the strongest evidence, but there was something in a salon that did provoke a connection between red and the inks of power. So if I were to say, okay, well, obviously the inks of revelation would be associated with the black flower, immediately I'd say, okay, well, why is that obvious? Because again, whatever I would normally associate with the black flower wouldn't suggest to me the inks of revelation. It's purely because I've pinned down the inks of power to the red flower that I'm entertaining that idea. Why am I entertaining that idea? Well, because ultimately I'm associating inks of containment with white. So which of these unthinkable things can I hold on to more? And again, as always, this could just be complete nonsense, and I shouldn't be making these connections at all. So with that in mind, because this is, again, I'm in this world where, I'll allow a whole bunch of different possibilities. I don't know which one is the right one yet. Maybe none of them will be correct. But it's made me a little bit more attuned to thinking about these associations between particular inks and potential flowers of the watchman's tree. So when I see this, right, the softest edge of the velvet's cloaking darkness, already here we would associate that with the black flower, but it's made more explicit in the next part. Invoked carefully through the black flower of the watchman's tree is a certain cure for Winkwell. Now, this is not conclusive simply because my inclusion of Catwink is something that I brought in myself, right? It's entirely possible to do this without inks. However, I am at least here working with Moon, right? And we'd say, okay, well, if the argument for the white flower is winter, well, then surely Moon also has an argument. And now we're back at this point. Oh, okay, so perhaps it's not so outrageous to place place the inks of containment with the black flower. And then, of course, that overcomes the challenges with the inks of revelation. And then, of course, you spend all the time justifying the white flower for inks of revelation, and it gives you endless hours of fun and pondering, and then you go over all the notes that you have for all of your other things. But I like to talk about this stuff on stream sometimes, not just because it takes up people's time and gives me more content, but I sometimes when I'm working through a game, and particularly one where I'm trying to reason through things, it's very hard to get a grip on sometimes where ideas come from, or, if you have a notion and then you want to expand on it. Or better still, right? A really common question that at least successful writers will be, I've never asked this question, is where do you get your ideas from, right? And it's probably something that scares the hell out of people because they don't have a real answer to it. And some people do, and it's not a very good one. Some people do, and then they wind up shared all over the place, but they don't actually necessarily tell people where they can get their own ideas. And there are actually people who've done rather good books on, like writers who have done rather good books on this. But the thing that I think makes that so difficult to answer is that I think a lot of us can probably relate to the idea of sort of being in the zone on something, right? Where you'll write. I remember this year, I've been behind in terms of some of the writing that I want to do. I've written quite regularly this year, but very little of that has actually been published on the blog. And that is something that I'd like to work on personally. But, this year I can say for sure there is something that a type of writing that I've wanted to do that I've finally done after a long period of time, even at a point actually where I was wondering if I had lost my ability to do something like that. And I was very happy with it. And, and the few people who've read it also are very, it's pretty regularly gotten some very encouraging responses. So I'm feeling good about this. But again, when you have those experiences, when you think about it, it's very often something that we will chase, but we don't always have a good articulation of how we got there because we kind of only realize it after the fact, or maybe even when we're in the middle of it. And of course, when we're in the middle of it, we want to get the work done. So as a result, where I can, even if it's something that's very fragile and it's very early, it's potentially something that's wrong. And this is something that sometimes the internet doesn't help us with, right? Because there's always going to be somebody who, knows better and is going to set you straight on the internet because heaven forbid people be wrong online, right? But it is, to me, I think valuable to try and capture those moments like little photographs or something, because those can sometimes be some, I don't know, if nothing else, they're data points, right? To give you an idea in terms of how certain ideas kind of came into your head. And I mean, sometimes maybe it can be a way out if you wind up being mistaken, but I think if nothing else, it's just a nice little set of patterns to follow. And then of course, if you have some that you can identify that maybe led to a really interesting place, you have some hope of being able to put it down to more than just, the muse showed up today. And it's like, usually it doesn't work like that. So anyways, for what it's worth. Sometimes it's also just nice to chat. So speak to Denzel. He does a lot with Silence This Man. And we've got our fear. I don't think we're really going to do much with these memories, but I might as well generate them because we've got time. The one thing I still haven't done for this game is sat down with, I've got my notes, right? I've got individual papers and a tablet and things like that with little things that I jot down, but I haven't actually systematically gone through the game and really dug into certain ideas. A lot of it is still just sort of impressions that come up while playing. All right, I think the time's come to open up the abandoned librarian's quarters. A bright haven on the house's seaward side, innocent of protections and menacing influences, though it'll take some work to set it right and clean it. There have been many theories about what Winkwell is and why, but the Velvet is an hour of secrets, and if we question her too closely, she might withdraw her protection. The Winkwell contamination has been removed. Okay, so we have, I think this is the original radical measure, certainly looks like it. And let's go, I know this was kind of a collection. Ugh. Can I cram another one in here? I guess the first question is, are there any Rose ones already? Yes, the Red Book of Brittany. Hey, we can fit it. All right, and we'll... So the usual rule for myself is I don't want the sweet bones to be exclusively about making money. So I guess the question would be, with my shaft, is there something useful that I can do with it today that will get me started on something useful for tomorrow? So if I want to save a memory, I've already got the impulse, the solace, and the foresight to work with. If I can't use this to make any food. We've got no shortage of amethyst ampules, so I don't think... I mean, not that that's the only crafting that I can do. The fact that it's the shaft really does limit some of the things that I can do. I suppose there's always the option, too, of checking out some of the different busts, but I'm actually feeling pretty comfortable with where those go. So I should be a little more careful to use my... Yeah, I should be a little more careful to use my elements of the soul better over the course of the day, but in this case, we'll do some fixing and mending. There's not much work on offer in Brandkrug, but I can find 6 pence worth of odd jobs. So I think tomorrow in-game, although probably day after tomorrow in terms of streaming, my aim is going to be to prepare... Oh, you know what? Sorry, that was my bad. I should have made the coffee. Oh well. So I'm thinking probably tomorrow's tasks will make another ink. I should get the last... yeah, we'll get the potatoes. So that one I don't actually think is too much of a hardship. I think we just need to open up the sack of vegetables and we're good to go. It might be nice if I can go to Crowcross Sand some more. The other thing is, it wouldn't be a bad idea to try and read some books with a goal of maybe moving, like being able to commit some more stuff to the Tree of Wisdoms in mind. Let's actually take a minute here and think about the different books that I have access to. So really the Gospel of Nicodemus is the one that, oh, you know what? Today might have been a good day to do that just because of the sunny day. We would have had the lantern to work with. So we've got Pyroglyphics. Well, Pyroglyphics only gets me 2, so... But Revelation should get me the 3rd. Yeah, so that would have gotten us 5, which we add the mirror scope to. We can't keep a sunny day overnight, though, so... yeah, sunny day overnight. Okay, so this one's a bit higher of priority just because of the skill that it gets... Or not the skill, the... oh yeah, no, the lessons that it gets me. Glimmering is a bit of a high priority one because of the uniqueness of the bittersweet certainty. And I suppose Beekeeper's End is another one that I want because of the insects and nectars. I don't know. We'll work with it. It's not clear to me, though, that I need one of these memories over another. Although I can see how having a foresight for Denzel could be helpful. So now that night has fallen, I can rest and perhaps dream on the day's doings. And I imagine we will get to read the description of the librarian's quarters. When the Curia of the Isle acquired the deed to the abandoned De Wolf estate, Ambrose Westcott became first librarian and had this cozy nook constructed above the north wing to fit his preferences. His successor, Kitty, preferred the room next door. She lamented that the reek of Westcott's pipe remained long after his death, and her successor, Solomon Husher, preferred the Long Tower for his own chilly reasons, but most librarians have enjoyed the peace and the sea view. So this room, of course, gives us 3 busts that we can put down. So we've already got Solomon Husher as the 3rd, we've got Kitty as the 2nd, and if we have Ambrose Westcott, oh no, here he is. We can fill that in. A niche with a plaque, who often purified, but was often not pure. So that's given us 3 busts to work with if we haven't already done it. And of course, from the description of the Flood Gallery, I think we also know where Thirza Blake goes. And again, I've played this enough that I know if I wanted, I could put Fraser Strathcoyne's I could put his bust in place. I could put who are the other ones? I thought we had one other bust kicking around here somewhere. Oh yes, Serena Blackwood. Oh, and Walter de Wolf. So we have a few. But so Baron Silence would go, or we can probably get that from the description. So Anish with a plaque who saw what had not yet passed. So kind of by process of elimination, you can actually place Walter. Also, it says, who commanded the raising of this stair. Did we read that text yet? It's all starting to wind together. Doesn't look like we have. But yeah, in any case, there's definitely some more busts that I can place if I need, but I figure it doesn't hurt to put these things down in, you know, when I've got a reason for putting them down. But yeah, so certainly I have quite a few different things to investigate in this room. Let's go. So we've got 3 Baronial period books, 3 Dawn period books, and 1 Curia period book. An inscribed stone, a stone tablet with roads of badly worn scratches that once probably were writing. God's Return, a green shoot splits a rock. A twinned fish stone, the stone's disc is lighter than it should be, and the surface is soapy smooth. A half-faceless face, a mask to fit a face that at very least began as human. A watchful candle, a witching to sane. Librarian's timepiece, one of Ambrose Westcott's appalling Rococo enthusiasms. This one, less ugly than some, was suffered to remain by his sentimental successors. Librarian's glasses, they're not lenses, just plain glass, but a certain sort of visitor is disappointed by a librarian who doesn't wear glasses. Incidentally, this counts as light. Pale bust, a delicate-featured young woman. Inscription reads, Abra Southie. Watering can, so a nectar tool. Of course, the drawback here is compared to the bronze knife, can't really justify using... Excuse me. Can't really justify using the bronze knife when the watering can... Or, sorry, can't justify using the watering can when the bronze knife is available. Pot of Avidity, a lush and hungry ornament. Potted pink orchid, a little smudge of dawn. A pot of malachite daisies. Thomas de Wolf was fond of these. It's not what you'd expect from Thomas de Wolf. A potted fern, a pleasantly primitive plant. Potted white orchid, a little smudge of snow. Potted bamboo, water it, and you can almost hear it growing. A fringed lamp, a cozy little nightlight. Librarian's footstool, a sea-colored star-ornamented footstool. Librarian's armchair, a sea-colored star-ornamented armchair. And the librarian's quarters. Librarians are prone to backache, and the mattress here has always been a hard one, even in Westcott's time. All right. So yes, there's the salon to prepare for, and then if I can, it would be nice to try and use Denzel to open up something in the house. We do have a couple of easy forge tasks ahead of us, but all of that will be handled the next day in game and on Wednesday, the next episode. As always, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.